Good evening. The April 11th meeting of the Evanston City Council will come to order. Would the clerk please
Recording
call the
in
roll?
progress.
Councilmember Sufferton. Councilmember Ravel. Here. Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Councilmember Hadakaris.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly. Councilmember Braithwaite. Here. Councilmember Nguyen. Here. Councilmember Newsma.
Here.
Councilmember Burns.
Here.
8 members having answered the call of the roll. We have a quorum and are ready to do our work. The first item on our agenda is my public announcements and proclamations. I have one proclamation declaring April 20th, William B. Snell VFW Post number 1786 Auxiliary Day. The proclamation reads as follows. Whereas the William B. Snell VFW Post number 7186 Women's Auxiliary was chartered on April 20th, 1947 by the National Organization to Support World War II Veterans and their Families, following the establishment of the William B. Snell Memorial Veterans of Foreign Wars Post the previous year. And whereas for 75 years, the Snell Post VFW Auxiliary members have continued to fulfill the mission of supporting the VFW, serving veterans and service members of all war eras and their families, and spreading patriotism throughout our community. And whereas Snell Post VFW Auxiliary members have volunteered thousands of hours, donated thousands of dollars, and honored hundreds of veterans. And whereas the Snell Post VFW Auxiliary serves, along with nearly 2 million other VFW and auxiliary members, to support our country's nearly 20 million veterans. And whereas the City of Evanston is pleased to recognize the William B. Snell Post Auxiliary on the special occasion of its 75th anniversary of service to veterans and the larger community. Now, therefore, I, Daniel Biss, Mayor of the City of Evanston, Illinois, do hereby proclaim April 20th, 2022 as William B. Snell VFW Post Auxiliary Day in the City of Evanston in recognition of its 75 years of service to veterans and their families and as an asset to our larger community.
You're going to be a representative of the group to say something? Okay.
Thank you to the Honorable Mayor, Daniel Biss, and Honorable Alderman of 5th Ward, Bobby Barnes. We wholeheartedly thank you for assisting us in getting the proper wording together for this great occasion. As we all know, no one survived anything for 75 years unless they are in a very loving community. So we thank the Evanston community, and we just ask that you continue to support us so that we may support others, our most precious commodities, our veterans. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sizemore. Thank you to the delegation from the auxiliary, and thanks to the whole group for all the wonderful service you provide to our community. It is really a fabulous thing. We thank you. The next item on our agenda is the city manager's public announcements.
None at this time.
Next is communications from the city clerk.
Just wanted to express the email support for the aux from Kathy Tate Bradish, Taiwanda Giscombe, and Christine Nixon. That's all, Mayor.
Next on our agenda is public comment. This evening, everyone will be given 3 minutes to provide comment. We'll begin with those who signed up in person to speak in person, starting with Susan Kelly.
Good evening, Mayor, City Manager, City Clerk, and Council members.
My name is Susan Kelly. I am a long-time resident of the 4th Ward in Evanston, and I am a subscriber of Northlight Theater. In fact, this weekend, I will participate as an audience member in one of their new performances. And if it's like prior experience, I'll look around and see a full theater, and it will cause me to think that all of those people there like me had to get up and go somewhere. They were looking for entertainment that they couldn't get at home by themselves on Netflix. Sorry. All of us will be there for a shared experience. We'll bring our hopes that we'll leave not only entertained, but informed and enlightened. And before I leave, I'll look around one more time and wish that I didn't have to travel to Skokie for this experience. Northlight should be in downtown theater. It will make our community better and stronger, and I really ask for your support of their ARPA request. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Reverend Michael Neighbors.
Mayor Biss, alderpersons, good evening to you all. I'm Michael Neighbors. I serve as president of the Evanston North Shore NAACP and pastor of Second Baptist Church in Evanston. I want to say, first of all, I'm grateful for your commendation to the Snell Post as very deserving, and we're grateful for that African American organization lifting up the veterans who have served in this country out of Evanston for the past 75 years. The Evanston North Shore branch has experienced recent exponential growth. We are quickly moving to a total membership of 600 persons. We are and continue to be the oldest and strongest civil rights organization in the United States. We continue to consistently challenge structures, institutions, and individuals, if necessary, when it comes to acts of discrimination and injustice toward the least and the lowest, the marginalized, victimized, oppressed women, people of color, and others. On this evening, however, we come before the Evanston Council to express our support of the Northlight Theater in its bid to receive $2 million from the American Recovery Act funds. For years, Northlight Theater has been focused on returning to downtown Evanston. In our Evanston, we have seen dramatic and substantial changes in the downtown area. Dozens of businesses were forced to close because of the economic impact of global pandemic. For a period of time in the spring and summer of 2020, our downtown almost looked like a ghost town. Despite the harsh reality of a downtown struggling to come back to life, Northlight remains dedicated to its goal of building a first-class, state-of-the-art performance theater. The theater will be within walking distance to train stations, walking distance from most of the university and seminary housing, and a short drive in every part of the town. Northlight has also been exemplary in providing plays that are representative of the rich diversity that comprises the makeup of our town. Artistic director B.J. Jones and executive director Timothy Evanston are no strangers to our community. They have worked to build a network that includes various sectors and diverse groups in our town. Each season, during the theater season for the past several years before COVID, Northlight received up to 50,000 people in audiences featuring their productions. Imagine that number of people once again walking the streets of downtown Evanston, not all at the same time, of course. The residual benefits are too numerous to count. Restaurants will be beneficiaries. Local businesses will experience a much-needed flurry of activity. Local contractors and builders will benefit as they assume the role of helping to construct the theater. The NAACP has already spoken with Northlight Board to ensure that contractors will include minorities and women. The theater will provide some employment for those who will work for it. Northlight will be able to share their professional skills and talents in all phases with youth theater companies in Evanston. The actual design of the building will also have a specific community area where various organizations and groups in Evanston can assemble and gather together. Northlight Theater in Evanston will attract incredible talent. Finally, the world is a challenging place right now, and so too is our nation. I remain convinced that one way of overcoming those challenges is through the gift of art. For true art, which includes theater, has no color, class, creed, dogma, political affiliation, ethnicity, or race. True art is emotion, human emotion of the heart. What better place for such emotion to be revealed than in the heart of our beloved community? So we ask that you would support them and support AUX as well. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Tiffany Wilson.
Hello, good evening. My name is Tiffany Wilson. I'm currently not a resident of Evanston. However, I'm a proud fifth-generation Evanstonian. Currently, I work in this great town. I'm here today to support the brilliant project of the Ox. It would be hard to understand why anyone wouldn't support this development due to the health and wellness aspect and what it will do for this community. The Ox is the first innovative idea this city has seen in quite some time, if ever, for Black businesses. Not only am I a huge supporter, I will also be one of the tenants of the Ox. A first-time business owner, the Ox will be creating a positive environment for my dream, the birthplace of many dreams, an environment to relax, converse with one another, support many other Black businesses and ideas, create first-time job opportunities for our youth, teach better, healthy ways of living, and start to a generational wealth. I ask of you today to vote yes to the Ox. Give this soon-to-be powerhouse the financial push it needs and deserves. There are 3 Evanston-born Black women that were nurtured by District 65 and 202, being in full control of this process. This project is intentional and has hired a Black-owned architect, construction company that would support more local job creation. There's nothing like the Ox in Evanston or anywhere near. This should not be a hard vote. I've watched a lot of unnecessary developments around this town. This, the Ox, this is so necessary. Do not forget that this $1 million is not going to just one project. It will go to over 10 to 20 Black and woman-owned businesses that will sit under one roof called the Ox. We cannot miss the point of this being for multiple businesses. This project deliberately will focus on jobs, small businesses, racial equity, wellness, innovation, and a proven model that is only new to Evanston, but not to the world. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Lonnie Wilson.
Hello, my name is Lonnie Wilson. I'm not an expert on too many things, but I'm an expert on 2 things: the beauty of Black femininity and Evanston, Illinois. I was born here in 1956 at St. Francis Hospital. And the reason I was born at St. Francis Hospital is because my mother couldn't go to Evanston Hospital because at the time they wouldn't allow African Americans to be born in Evanston Hospital. So I was born in St. Francis. And what's funny is, at the time, there was a patrolman, my mother's oldest brother, William Logan, was becoming the first African-American sergeant pretty much the next year after I was born. And so I guess my point to you is that Evanston has always done this wonderful thing. Now, I've had 2 ways of trying to describe this, one positive and one negative. So I'll try to stay positive because my daughter said don't be the normal Lonnie Wilson. So I won't be. But I'll say it pretty much like this. This is a legacy situation, this Ox. We're going to show Black and brown kids that are not even at the age of starting businesses that Evanston will support them. These children that are creating the Ox today are products of Dr. Hefner and Donald Michelin and Haven School and Dewey School. This is a legacy project. So why not show the next generation that the city of Evanston and this dais will support them? If they come up 20 years from now trying to get something, we know that you'll support white, wealthy, backed entities. We've proven that. Evanston is really good at that. Pretty much since the Methodists walked down the Green Bay Trail, you've done a really good job of supporting yourselves. The African American and the brown, and we have to come up here and kind of work at getting support. And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about support. Evanston can support this thing in a whole lot of ways. You can use its vast media power to push people towards the Ox. It can do so many things to teach other African American children, brown and Hispanic children that are sitting somewhere at Haven, at Dewey, that if they grow up and they have ideas, that this dais will support them. So this can be something a whole lot bigger than just a healthy black business. This can also be the story of Evanston finally living up to its creed of this racial nirvana that it tells everybody that it is. I got a nickname for the city of Evanston. I call it the lie by the lake, because it's never been this racial nirvana. It never has. It's always been a PR situation. It doesn't do it in actuality. It's just a story. We got to get past that story, people, and it's time to do it right now. So I won't say anything else because it's time for me to leave before I let it all out.
Thank you. The next speaker is Diana Dirks.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. I am not anti-homeless, and I know that you're not either. I run a nonprofit that gives hundreds of thousands of dollars to homeless, food insecure, and disadvantaged people in Northern Illinois. Further, my family and I chose to live on a block and in a ward with a large population of homeless and transient people. Across the street from us is the homeless day shelter that serves nearly 5,000 visitors in 2021. Actually, it's visits in 2021, and was open 52 weeks of the year. Down the block, we call the men who live at the Y our neighbors. This is the 4th ward. I've noticed there's a lot of accusation and fear-mongering that if you oppose the plans for a permanent shelter at the Margarita Inn, you're anti-homeless. That defense is too simple and way too polarizing for such a complex problem. What we are is pro-community, pro-city, pro-neighborhood, and most importantly, pro a better approach to solving homelessness than just one fly-by-night plan. Making the Margarita and a permanent shelter is untenable in terms of zoning, integration with the neighborhood, and the operations. Until the last 4 weeks or so, you heard only one side of this story about how it's going, and it's not been a success for the neighborhood on my part. Police Chief Eddington, Officer Mike Jones, both the established and the emerging businesses on Davis, and my neighbors have complied data, written, and spoken to you with our sides of the story. Not living in the neighborhood, you wouldn't have witnessed the public drunkenness, the getting high on the parkway, the mental rants, and the yelling on the street at midnight. And these are not one-off incidents. They are constant with data that's been backed up by the police department. Our community and our homeless citizens deserve a better solution than housing children and their parents down the hall from detainees awaiting trial and the acute mentally ill. A solution will take our best thought, our best work, much more than a presentation of tears at a community meeting and a puff piece in the round table. It takes much more than a Band-Aid solution from a group that may have the best of intentions but isn't doing a good job. My neighbors and I want to help. The Margarita Inn is not the best we can do. We need two-way dialogue, integration with the community, practical plans, not throwing millions of dollars at an old building. Outside of Capitol the other day, I saw a line of 7 people walking by, weighted down with possessions in jewel bags. My heart breaks for them, for how they've come to be there. They need a better solution than putting them behind the facade of the Margarita Inn and away from the taxpayers so they don't see them. My ask from you is to push back on these accusations and the fear-mongering that you're anti-homeless if you oppose the Margarita Inn plan. Think of how we can do better. We live in Evanston, you're our civic leaders, and we want the best solution we can give our residents, including the homeless. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Neil Gambo.
Good evening, Mayor Biss and City Council members, and thanks for the opportunity to step up here for a couple of minutes and talk a little on behalf of North Lights Theater request for the ARPA funds. I'm Neil Gambo. I'm a 20-year resident of the city of Evanston, and I have been the chair of the Mayor's Employer Advisory Council for the last 4 years, working primarily to create career pathways for young people into our cities employment picture. Now, I'm going to speak tonight about the impact of Northlight's plan through the eyes of workforce development and job creation. First, their return to Evanston as a solid, growing 40-year enterprise is going to have a very positive impact on the employment and workforce development picture in Evanston for Evanstonians. Their proposal articulates a full range of new and enduring employment opportunities for Evanstonians, from on-stage work to business operations, community outreach. You've all seen that, so I'm not going to bore you with that. But let's talk a little bit more about what it means when you revitalize a downtown area. This does lead to workforce development follow-on impacts for businesses and Evanstonians. And here's some granular ones. I'm going to give you some granular ones here. Incredible positive impact on restaurants and businesses. That's been well known. But what does that really mean? It's creating more jobs, developing career pathways in the culinary field, not just waiting tables. And these are opportunities which are clear workforce development opportunities. Then there's the effect on local businesses. Lamoille Hardware, Evanston Lumber, places where Northlight's going to be doing business to support all the things that go on inside that organization for years to come. More opportunity for young people to have more career opportunities with our local employers. Workforce development in the trades is going to be significantly enhanced with the construction jobs for the Northlight build-out. And these are important for ETHS students interested in careers in the trades. We have gauged the interest because there is a 17-week program right now going on. It's an after-school program for junior, seniors, and sophomores that just exposes them to all kinds of the trades. And there are 18 kids enrolled in this thing. It's volunteer. They want to understand the trades. And this program is going to continue through next year. Now, student interest is there. And when you talk about a student coming out of high school and be able to go onto a job site with contractors who really want to bring some of these really young people into the trades,
15
you've really
seconds.
got an opportunity.
15 seconds.
Okay. There's also, Northlight's been doing a lot of job shadowing and whatnot for kids. Anyway, workforce development is a key area for ARPA. And I think this particular project with Northlight's ARPA request really fills the bill on that particular aspect of the workforce development. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the in-person speakers this evening, and so we move now to the Zoom participants, beginning with Laurice Bell, who will be followed by Karen Courtwright and then Annie Coakley.
Hi, I'm Laurice Bell. Good evening, Mayor Biss. Good evening, alderpersons. I'm here to represent Evanston Rules. My partner, Ron Whitmore, and I have a podcast. Ron is unable to be here. He had a prior commitment, so I'm representing both of us. There are many diverse voices in Evanston with important and necessary stories to be told. Two of these are the Ox and Northlight Theater. I'll speak first to the Ox. The Ox is doing something incredible as a business incubator, as a think tank of cooperation for people to get together to build community, to build a creative space, to build business, to have an opportunity to build something, as people have said before, that does not exist in Evanston. Evanston is being spoke of in so many spaces for good things. Let's continue with that lead. We've got Black women who have worked to raise the world. Let's support them in this endeavor of wonderful. It's everything that Evanston says it wants, and it's absolutely everything that Evanston needs. The second group that I'm here to speak about is Northlight Theater. Ron and I recently had the opportunity to go see their last production, which was called Fireflies by a Black playwright, Danya Love. It was a beautiful production, and the theater was crowded. It was crowded, it was diverse, there were elderly, there were young kids who were there on a school trip who were speaking back to the stage, there was so much good there. It was about the civil rights movement, and I was there and I was entertained and I was educated, and I too thought, why is this not in Evanston? I grew up as a child of downtown Evanston. My father had a business. I remember the heyday when there was activity and people walking and people eating and people making plans, and this was before there was any liquor. This was when it was dry. We saw this incredible play, and how incredible would it be to have first-rate, world-class live theater in Evanston? All of these groups, both of these groups, are represented by Evanstonians, people who've chosen to raise their children here, people who've grown up here, people who still want to do this here. The $1 million that the Ox wants, the $2 million that Northlight wants. It's a drop considering what they would bring to this town. I look forward to seeing both of these spaces, to being able to support them, and to seeing how they absolutely will support us. Thank you. It's time that we believe.
Thank you. The next speaker is Karen Courtwright, followed by Annie Coakley, and then Michael Vasilko.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate your time, members of the City Council. I'm so disappointed I can't be at City Hall tonight in person, but I'm zooming in from Colorado to once again call on the Council to approve, without undue restriction, the ARPA grant for the Ox. The aspects I want to highlight are three. First, the Ox is a perfect fit. This entrepreneurial wellness hub has for the ARPA criteria with respect to addressing impacted communities and helping right racial inequities of the past. Secondly, the importance of the City Council acting on this important to support Black business development in Evanston. It's something that we've said over and over across the many years I've been involved in Evanston that we want to do, but we've rarely provided for. And third, I think it's so important to take advantage of the excellent leadership of the Ox team, their deep ties to Evanston, their proven commitment to bring back to the Black community the kind of business activity that was historically present, and the brilliant development approach taken by the growing season and the Ox to bring sustainable social change to Evanston through the use of real estate and eventual community ownership. I personally intend to be one of those community owners and cannot wait for the time when they can accept my generous check in that regard. Finally, just a quick note that this kind of innovation is something deserving of all the attention and all the support the city can muster. It is cutting edge but proven, and it will certainly bring the kind of accolades to Evanston that our efforts in reparations have. Thank you, and I look forward to your unanimous vote a little later this evening to provide this grant to the Ox.
Thank you. The next speaker is Annie Coakley, followed by Mike Vasilko, and then Leslie Williams.
Good evening, Mayor Biss, City Clerk Mendoza, and members of the City Council. I'm Annie Coakley. I'm the Director of Downtown Evanston. I'm here tonight to express the support of the Downtown Evanston Board for the Northlight Theater's ARPA request of $2 million. As many of you know, the Downtown Evanston organization is a business nonprofit that provides district management to Evanston Central Business District. And one of the goals of the organization is to position downtown Evanston as a highly desirable retail, entertainment, and cultural district that attracts Chicagoans, North Shore residents, and Evanston residents and tourists. Under the guidance of the Downtown Evanston Board of Directors, the staff work to achieve this destination marketing goal by creating events, promotions, and special programs that bring visitors to shop, dine, and enjoy the district's many amenities. We work closely with the city and the Chicago North Shore Convention and Visitor Bureau, as well as our businesses and property owners, to create a special place where people want to come and visit. As has been talked about tonight, during the pandemic, we did lose several restaurants and a key entertainment attraction. Of course, that's the movie theater, although it's coming back. But entertainment uses are a strong complement to the restaurants, of which many have experienced a decrease in revenue, especially with the absence of the daytime population of the office workers. And just today, I had an in-person meeting with several restaurant owners, and there was a lot of discussion about Northlight and the excitement and the need for this entertainment and cultural use to be in downtown Evanston. So with that, thank you for your time, and I look forward to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mike Vasilko, who will be followed by Leslie Williams and then Joe Flanagan.
Thank you very much. I spoke at APNW about agenda item A4, which is the $75,000 a year for 3-year contract that the staff is recommending to Forward Space. I recommend to the council about Forward Space, which is a furniture dealer. The memo in the document says that Steelcase is that Forward Space is the exclusive Steelcase vendor in the Chicagoland area. Laura Biggs during APW said, well, that was misleading a little bit, but they're the exclusive Steelcase representative for Sourcewell, which is the company that offers discounts to municipalities and other groups. Well, that's not true either. Forward Space is listed in the Sourcewell website as one of the furniture dealers that represents Steelcase. Interiors for Business is a second, and there are others. Forward Space and Interiors for Business are the two closest to Evanston, within 2 miles. But Forward Space is not exclusive. And, staff constantly comes to the podium after their question, and they kind of ramble on for a while until it gets confusing, and then the issue dies. So my point is that item A4 should be held, and other businesses who are listed for Sourcewell should be asked to provide competitive bidding for that $75,000 a year for 3 years. Shouldn't be no bid. Same thing for item A11. I didn't get a chance to research it, but Garland DBS is being given a $707,000 no bid contract because apparently they're in Sourcewell and our staff likes them. So that's not a reason to give them a no bid contract. Those two items, and then just briefly, I think a lot of people support ED1 and ED2, the grants being given to Northlight and the Ox, and for good reason. However, I would, that those two grants represent 30%. Those two grants represent 30% of the $10 million that's being devoted to economic development. And I just think that after a period of time, that money should be recycled. There should be a way of those two groups paying the city back so that money can be given back to another group that's just starting out. I just think there needs to be some recycling of the few ARPA dollars that the city received. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Leslie Williams, who will be followed by Joe Flanagan and then Elliot Zashin.
Good evening to Mayor Biss and to the City Council. My name is Leslie Williams. I live in the 7th Ward, and I am speaking on behalf of the Community Alliance for Better Government, which is an Evanston grassroots organization supporting racial equity and government transparency. As we all know, in January, the City of Evanston conducted a search for a new city manager. Before candidates were interviewed, the search firm held a town hall with residents, held focus groups, and shared the job description and a portfolio about the job on the city manager recruitment area of the city website. There is a detailed timeline with dates for posting the position, reviewing applications, for city council interviews, and then for the public town halls with candidates. A second search process is underway, which has been far less transparent than either of the prior two searches. Although the city manager recruitment webpage remains disturbingly blank, apparently the search firm has already presented candidates to the city council for interviews. Yet there has been no public notification whatsoever from Mayor Biss or the city council. Once again, our local representatives appear reluctant to keep residents informed about the selection process for the single most important position in Evanston city government. We ask, why is there no timetable posted on the city website as there was for the previous search? Why wasn't the job description posted there? How many candidates applied and how diverse was the pool? How is the city implementing racial equity into the selection process? What criteria is the council using to evaluate candidates? Will there be public forums with the candidates? Is the new search firm using material collected from the public during the previous search? And how else is public input going to be used in the process? These questions should have been answered publicly before candidates were brought in for interviews. Keeping the public informed should be treated as a core responsibility, not a nuisance. To regain the public trust, we call on Mayor Biss and the council to provide a comprehensive update on the city manager hiring process, including details on public input and racial equity. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Joe Flanagan, who will be followed by Elliot Zashin and then Tina Payton.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, I have already spoken on behalf of the AUX project and Northlight, and if earlier tonight at a previous meeting by mistake, so I apologize, and I'll cede my time to in order to get everyone out of this meeting earlier.
Thank you. The next speaker is Elliot Zashin, who will be followed by Tina Payton and then Dorian Price.
Elliot Zashin from the 9th Ward. The council has before it tonight two grant proposals to AUX and to Northlight Theater. Both of these projects have sought public funds on the premise that their objectives are congruent with the goals of our city government. Am I being heard?
Yes, we hear you clearly.
Okay. And therefore, these grants are offered as a responsible use of public funds to assist in the accomplishment of these objectives. I won't take issue with this premise. Both proposals sound very impressive and should provide important benefits to our community. However, I urge the council to insert into both of these contracts a clause that gives the city the legal right to claim repayment of the grant for a period of 10 years if the project, for whatever reasons, does not fulfill its publicly stated objectives. In other words, the city's purpose in assisting these projects is to help achieve these objectives. So if it becomes clear that they are not being achieved, the city should have a claim on whatever assets the grantee has at its disposal. This should be in effect for 10 years, and this should be standard procedure, not just for these two grants, but for any grants of public money like this. This in no way undermines the purpose of the grant, but it does signal the grantees that public funds are not comparable to private investments made with the intention of achieving a satisfactory financial return. The city accepts that there is some risk involved in making such grants. A project may fail due to circumstances beyond the control of the grantee, and the remaining assets may not be sufficient to repay the entire grant. But the grantees cannot view public funds provided by the city as just another business investment. If a grantee, and I hope these two do, have a consistent track record of community-based activity over a 10-year period, then Evanston can feel that this was a very solid investment of public funds, and there need be no further obligation on the part of the grantees. I hope this will be inserted into these contracts and into subsequent ones. Just to change the subject quickly, why haven't we been kept informed about the second city manager search? Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Tina Payton, followed by Dorian Price, and then Linda Del Bosque.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, City Clerk, City Council, City Manager. I agree with the previous speaker, and you need to have some safeguards in place if you do approve, which I'm sure you will. So we do not end up something again like Chicago Chicken and Waffles on Dempster, where you lost 200 or 250,000. I think you recouped some, but not all. Also, the French pastry restaurant on Howard Street, where you gave them money to remodel and they closed within 8 months. And the building on Chicago Avenue that you gave $2 million. And they were supposed to be finished 3 years ago. Reckless spending is inappropriate. I believe that the North Lights Theater needs to stay in Skokie. They already received $4 million in disaster relief fund, and they need to use it and improve their business in Skokie. The AUX money is going to white people. It is not going to black people. Please correct yourselves when you're saying this. Lori Laser or Lazar, whatever her name is, she and 2 other white people purchased the building that they're going to, and even by Miss Tiffany's own testimony a few minutes ago, said she will be a tenant. This is not ownership for black people. Please stop saying this. It is not reparations. I do not want to hear white people telling black people what reparations is. I am a black person and I always promote black business, but black ownership. This money is going to a white group who is renting to black people. Once again, I will ask, how many black people own any property in downtown Evanston besides the Robinsons or anywhere commercial property? Also, American Rescue Plan. It's called a rescue plan. You need to rescue the businesses that are already in existence that have been hurt by COVID-19. The city is throwing around money to people who are coming into town with new business to fill their own pockets. Here I am again asking you, are you really concerned about affordable housing? Or is it just another agenda item a few times a year? Soon there won't be any affordable units left because you keep passing tall buildings with a few one-bedroom apartments not for families. What about landlords like myself and Carla Sutton here on the line have been asking you for many, many years to help us help the people that need affordable units? Please stop saying this is reparations. It is not, and you need to correct your mouth. Black lives matter all the time, not sometimes. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Doreen Price, who will be followed by Linda Del Bosque and then Sue Lolbach. Is Ms. Price in the Zoom?
Oh, hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, I got my buttons mixed up. I'm one of these people that really and truly value people who have passion, and like Tina and Carlos and others who are trying to make a difference. And I also understand the frustrations when you not feel heard. From my own experience, as well as having to amplify that in terms of having a lifelong situation where biases and prejudices have no place in society, but frequently take over other people's lives in the worst ways. So with Tina and all the others, I can only say that I wish you success in dealing with the city in terms of having the city understand something that has yet to understand properly. And with all the people supporting the city, there's really no excuse not to have that happen, except that the city manager herself doesn't agree with it, and that could possibly be a problem and a reason for examination of our city government structure. In terms of Northlight and Ox, I'm so happy that there's at least a chance for people to do some good with their money, and I hope that it's not as bad as what Tina says about not real ownership. It really demands real ownership, and also a guarantee by the city that there's not going to be someone doing a flipping on this project that's going to hurt those businesses and those people, rather than in terms of some rich developer coming in and doing something like that. In terms of water cutoffs, the council members had asked for questions, had questions for the staff, and the staff are still waiting for answers, yet they want to make a decision to do things right away. They need to have a uniform definition of need, not, oh, well, it's LIHEAP now, and really it should be Salvation Army, because Salvation Army understands that there's a little bit more, like maybe $100 or $200 more in income. That shouldn't disqualify you if you're a homeowner, especially with all the other expenses. So we need a uniform need criteria, and that includes the senior benefit card, which in the past has worked well. Why someone has to be 80 years old to get a wheel task consideration makes no sense to me at all. Younger people like 70 should count too. A uniform need assessment criteria for sure. We need access to local person help, not in-person, not a personal kind of help, not this, well, just go speak to the hand, because sometimes that's all it is when you're making phone calls and all, and you don't get connected to the right people.
15 seconds.
And this adversely impacts on quality of life, and we consider that in terms of liens, and if liens can make quality of life better, then that's what the city should do. It is probably far less expensive than cutoffs and liabilities associated with that, as stated that health services have to be called in if it's more than 2 days.
Time.
And then, okay, thank you. And then the Salvation Army I mentioned should be included in the assessment. And then,
Thank you.
why group those in need with those who won't pay? Equity demands respect and compassion, not demeaning treatment. Also, please have the ability to pay down via charge card, not snail mail. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Linda Del Bosque, followed by Sue Lolbach, and then Carlos Sutton. Looks like Linda's not in the Zoom, so we'll move ahead to Sue Lolbach, who will be followed by Carlos Sutton, and then Priscilla Giles.
Hi, thank you, Mayor Biss. I'm going to pass. I don't have anything to say.
Thank you. The next speaker is Carlos Sutton, who will be followed by Priscilla Giles, and then Nadia Enriquez.
Good evening, Mayor Biss and Clerk Mendoza and members of the City Council. My comments tonight reflect an adamant opposition. Vote no for AUX, vote no for Northlight for the following reasons. One, the Recovery Act is intended to help people who are adversely affected by the pandemic. What loss did AUX occur? What loss did the nightlight theater occur? Nothing. Again, we're taking money that was intended to help people who are really in need and using it as a slush fund for developers. Secondly, we hear all this talk about black business. Aren't we tired of Church and Dodge, Emerson and Dodge, where black businesses are paying rent to white absentee landlords? Do we want to, is this the system that we're going to have in Evanston, where white people come from out of state, buy a building, and then fill it up with black tenants? I don't think that's an appropriate way to have a successful business that has legacy that you can pass from one generation to another. You can only do it by land ownership, not by land rentership. And secondly, the Northlight. I don't know how many people have lived in Evanston as long as I have, but have you heard of the Central Theater, Have you ever heard of the Cornet Theater? Have you ever heard of the Valencia? Have you ever heard of the Varsity? Have you ever heard of Century Movies on Maple? All are gone. Even Fleetwood Jourdain is no longer in the 5th Ward. It's over now at Noyes. Why do we still look to the city for white assistance that is only tokenness and the kinds of not appropriate aid to give us a hand up? So again, vote no on the AUX, vote no on the lighthouse, and one other, the proposed soccer field on the corner of Church and Dodge. If it requires a variance, there should be notification of the residents and public meetings held. And when did we get the Environmental Protection Agency clearance saying that that land could be developed when it was deemed very, very polluted? I thank you for the idea to make these comments, and I hope that you will vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Priscilla Giles, who will be followed by Nadia Enriquez.
Good evening, council members and Mayor Biss. I am speaking about the Northlight Theater and AUX. I'm wondering how, I don't know who it was who spoke so adamantly against having the Northlight Theater, but whoever it was a white person, and they said it would not last long, and it's closed now. But why could that not be used for the theater? Although I don't think that, I can't believe that Skokie really wants to lose its lucrative income and entertainment center. People don't have a problem going from Evanston to Skokie for that. And I'd also like to speak about the AUX. The AUX is the project that the Black community asked for, and we got Emerson Square with limited time for low-income residents. What Evanston really needs is permanent low-income housing for the residents of Evanston. The money that is being spent for AUX and Northlight is a lot of money, and it's not using the people that need to have it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Nadia Enriquez.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for members of the council and Mayor Biss for allowing me to speak. I'm here to express our support for the AUX. I represent Sunshine Enterprises. I'm the Community Business Academy Director for the organization. And I just want to mention that we are supporting the AUX in their development. And I want to give you a little bit of background of who we are and why are we supporting the AUX. First of all, we are a non-for-profit organization that is located in the south of Chicago. We provide entrepreneurship training to entrepreneurs and small business owners. And most of our participants are from low-income families, marginalized communities. In fact, 95% of our alumni are of Black origin and Hispanic. So another thing is that 75% of our students are women, and the average income of our students is $32,000. So that just gives you an idea of the population that we serve. Now, Sunshine Enterprises is committed to AUX. Why? Well, 3 of the people that are partners in the AUX are graduates from Sunshine Enterprises. So we are envisioning having our North Hub for classes and our business cohort of the Community Business Academy at the AUX. What does that mean? That we will serve the area of Evanston, which we have been. We just didn't have a hub in Evanston. So that would be our hub, and we would share the expenses as a tenant at the AUX. Apart from that, I can say that we are an inclusive organization, and that just happens to serve Black and brown communities. But we actually interact with other organizations that are in the communities, because our mission is to train, coach, and connect our students so they can establish their businesses or grow them, and at the same time build their communities. So we are very grounded in building communities and working with grassroots organizations. So in a way, it's like the job of Tiffany Holmes, Jackie White, and Tasha Wilson is to pay it forward. We were able to help them a few years ago, and they are wonderful entrepreneurs that have their own businesses. And so now they want to create a space where they can develop their businesses and also provide, through Sunshine Enterprises, continue providing entrepreneurship cohorts to the population. And by the way, most of our cohorts are very accessible. We base our registration fee on income, and we provide scholarships and in some cases payment plans, but they're very economical. So this will be something that we will be offering to the community of Evanston and the northern suburbs as well. And so it's we hope that you support the OX so we can continue providing and supporting marginalized communities of Black and Brown communities in the northern suburbs and in the town of Evanston.
Thank you very much. This concludes public comment for the evening and brings us to our consent agenda. Would any members of council like to remove any items from the consent agenda?
Yes, I'd just like to note that in Administration and Public Works, items A6 and A7 were held in committee, as well as item A12.
Did you say A6, A7, and A12?
Yes, were held in committee until the 25th.
And in P&D, we amended items P1 and P2.
And
you'd like them removed from the consent agenda so we can discuss the
Right,
amendments?
exactly.
Understood. Thank you.
Oh, and then I guess I'll note that item apologies.
A15.
Mr. Cummings?
This A15 was amended at committee as well.
Yes. Yeah, and so I'd like to remove that from the consent agenda.
Okay.
Thank you, Council Cummings.
A4.
So far, I have A4, A6, A7, A12, A15, and P1 and P2. Anything else?
Oh, ED1 and ED2? Or at least, I mean, for me, ED1, not ED2.
Okay, so I think I heard ED1 but not ED2 at this time.
Oh, ED 1 and 2.
Okay, so now I've heard both. So just to recap, A4, A6, A7, A12, A15, P1, P2, ED1, and ED2. Is there...
Could you say the list again, Mayor?
Of course, I'm sorry. A4, A6, A7, A12, A15, P1, P2, ED1, ED2.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? Going once. Going twice. In that case, I would entertain a motion to, on the rest of the consent agenda.
I move the consent agenda.
Second.
Councilmember Reed moves the consent agenda with the exceptions of A4, A6, A7, A12, A15, P1, P2, ED1, and ED2. Councilmember Braithwaite seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Heracariz.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Braithwaite.
Aye.
Councilmember Nguyen.
Aye.
Councilmember Newsma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion passes, and with it, the entire consent agenda, except for the 9 items previously mentioned. This brings us then to item A4. Would someone like to make a motion on item A4?
I move
Mr. Mayor,
item
I'll move.
A4.
Second.
Councilmember Reed moves item A4. Councilmember Newsome seconds. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you. Just some clarity. There was some discussion during AP&W about going forward with forward space because it was the exclusive steel furniture from put out by the Sourcewell community distributor. And I did go ahead and I looked it up online. It is true that the other, this was confirmed that when we asked staff that this was the only forward space was the only provider, but in fact, I'm looking at the Sourcewell site now, and it does in fact also list interiors for business for the Chicago area also. So I'm a little, because you said that was the only one, so I just want some clarification on that, because it does list others that provide the same product.
Members of the City Council, my name is Laura Biggs. I'm the city engineer. So after our APW meeting, I also went to the website and I did see that, and I reached out to Interiors for Business. I don't believe that they provide the same government contracting, but I cannot verify that for certain. So if you need to hold it, I can get additional information.
That would be great. I would like, since we are going forward with this idea on the assumption, and I don't doubt that perhaps the original proposal here might be the one we go with anyway, but I do feel since there is more than one option available, that we should double check and make sure that we're getting the best deal possible. So
I will clarify that I do believe that since they're both offered through Steelcase on a Sourcewell, if the IFB is still through Sourcewell, I believe they would offer the same discount because it's the contract with Steelcase. It's just the local vendor. But I will certainly verify.
that would be great. Thank you. Thank you. So I guess I'd like to just hold that so we can just get verification in terms of pricing.
Councilmember Kelly moves to hold item A4. Is there a second? Seeing none, the motion fails. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
No.
Councilmember Braithwaite. Aye. Councilmember Nguyen. Aye. Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
On this matter, there are 7 voting in favor and 1 voting against, and therefore item A4 passes. This brings us to item A15. Would someone care to make a motion on item A15?
So moved.
Second.
Was that you, Councilmember Braithwaite?
Correct.
So Councilmember Braithwaite moves passage of item A15 as amended in committee. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Is there any discussion? Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, I just want to let council know what was updated in committee. What was updated is that we removed the committee removed B plates, and so as it stands, vehicles that are passenger vehicles and fleet vehicles would have to pay a $30 annual registration fee. And so this still would not address large commercial pickup vehicles, which I think is really the goal of what we're attempting to address here. I think we can develop this policy a bit better. So I would like to move to hold this so we can have staff take a better crack at it, because the real problem that we're trying to solve, I think, is not addressed here. Alternatively, we could come back and develop something just for the B plates, but to say that an Uber driver, for example, has to pay now a $30 fee annually, and I don't know if that's achieving what we want to achieve.
A second to hold.
Councilmember Reed moves to hold item A15. Councilmember Burns seconds. This is, I think, tell me, it's not a debatable motion, right? So the only question is there a motion to overturn the hold? Seeing none, the hold stands, and item A15 will return to our council agenda on April 25th. I presume as amended in committee tonight. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. This brings us to item P1. Would someone like to make a motion on item P1?
So moved.
Okay, Councilmember Braithwaite moves passage of item P1 as amended in the Planning and Development Committee. Councilmember Nguyen seconds. Is there any discussion?
I'm sorry, this was referred back to committee, was it not? That was the action that the committee took.
Well, the motion the motion is different than what's in the packet is all, so
So first of all, the chair of the committee is, I think, absent because of a family commitment this evening. Councilmember Ravel, were you chairing?
Yes, I was.
Can you explain for those of us who weren't there what occurred with item P1 in committee?
Well, up until now, we've thought that we had to table this item for no longer than 120 days, and so we kept setting new dates within 120 days. So we've now learned that we've now asked the subcommittee to continue its work and let us know when it is ready to report back to P&D, so there's not a deadline, not a date deadline anymore.
Okay, and so what is the item before the body in that case?
Well, it says for action, so I mean, I guess we have to vote to.
At the committee level, it was referred to a different subcommittee. So I'm not sure if there's action for us to take here.
That's what occurred today?
No.
Yeah, both these items go back to the subcommittee.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Okay.
I think what Devon meant is to remove them.
Okay, so we don't need to do anything at council then.
Okay, and Mr. Cummings, is that what you were going to say as well?
Yes, that was my understanding from Deputy City Attorney Michelle Rebos. That was a motion to refer or commit the item to the subcommittee, and so it just needed to be removed from the consent agenda.
Understood. Thank you. So both items P1 and P2 then, is that correct?
No, P2, we amended and are asking the council to approve it now.
All right, so I presume then the motion on item P1 is withdrawn. Is that correct, Councilmember? Councilmember Braithwaite?
I'm sorry, say that.
Your motion on item P1 is withdrawn then? Okay. So then that goes back to the subcommittee where it wants to be. And then Councilmember Ravel, do you want to make a motion on item P2 in that case?
Right. Well, I move to approve Resolution 22-R-22, approving a plat of subdivision for 1224 Washington Street as amended in committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Ravel moves passage of item P2, Resolution 22-R-22 as amended in committee. Councilmember Kelly seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Braithwaite.
Aye.
Councilmember Nguyen.
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
On this matter, there are 8 voting in favor and none voting against, and so item P2 as amended in the Planning and Development Committee is passed. This brings us to item ED1. Would someone like to make a motion on item ED1?
Jonathan?
Mr. Mayor, it would be my pleasure to move item ED1, Resolution 30-R-22, authorizing the city manager to execute a grant agreement with Northlight Theater.
Second.
Second.
Councilmember Nusma moves passage of item ED1, Resolution 30-R-22. Councilmember Reed seconds. Is there any discussion? We begin with Councilmember Reed.
Yes, I'm extremely appreciative that this is coming before us. I'm happy that Northlight is relocating to Evanston. I'm appreciative of Councilmember Nusma and his advocacy for this project. We've had a number of discussions this weekend. He reached out. I'm appreciative of Mr. Flanagan, and I am always forgetting the person that joined Mr. Flanagan during our meeting. But I am having a tough time wrapping my head around voting for $2 million for the Northlight Theater, given in their own projections that in order to for the city to realize a return on that investment, it would take 20 years before we saw a return on investment. And given that, Northlight, albeit that they were seeking to move to Evanston, was only in Skokie for 10 years or fewer before they decided to move from that location. And then finally, given that I do believe that while Northlight is a nonprofit organization, it is a well-connected and I would say well-financed nonprofit, and has the opportunity. The project initially started where before the pandemic, and there was not a request for funds, and I think the donor class of folks who would be donating to a project like this did not, in fact, see a reduction in income during the pandemic, but we know that some of our wealthiest folks actually saw increases in their income, and so I just don't think that their fundraising capacity is limited by the pandemic, and given the return on investment and the fact that there isn't a clawback, and even if we did include a clawback as folks have requested, as at points I have requested, it's ARPA funds, and so 10 years down the road, we wouldn't be able to get those funds back. We'd have to return the money to the federal government, and at that point, that's not a good investment for anyone. So I'm going to be voting no, but happy to see Northlight locating to Evanston. Thank you.
Councilmember Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am wholeheartedly in support of this project. Almost the entire time that I've been on the city council, which you all know is quite some time, we have been trying to get live theater back in our downtown. We did an analysis about the Varsity Theater, probably in my first or second term. It wasn't possible. We looked, the cost was too high for the city to bear. We looked hard at when the movie theaters were coming, about what could we do? Where could we locate a live theater in our core downtown? Once again, fiscally, it was not possible for the city to do. We are a city filled with arts, filled with the arts, and yet we don't have a place in our downtown for it. So I am thrilled that Northlight is coming back. I was a Northlight subscriber when it was in the old Coronet Theater, which has been since moved. Yes, it was after it had stopped being a XXX theater, if someone in the audience remembers. We were thrilled to have the Northlight there. And then they did have to move to Skokie because they couldn't find a place here in Evanston, reluctantly moved to Skokie. So the idea that they do want to come back, and they have figured out a way to do it in what I consider an extraordinary building with programs that we know will benefit Evanstonians of all ages, is really critically important. Once again, okay, I've got my gray beard growing here, guys. I was on the city council when we voted for the movie theaters, and we did see a revitalization of our downtown. There was an enormous amount of discussion about that. Was this the right move or not to make? We saw that bringing in bodies, 1.5 million bodies who bought tickets at the movie theaters the first full year of operation, suddenly caused us to have a renaissance in our restaurants, as well as many more people living in our downtown. The movie theaters are going to be opening again, but we all know, I am hoping that we all will recognize the thrill of sitting in a big, dark movie theater again, and not just looking at your own screen at home, will bring people back out. But there is no substitute for live theater, and I think people are really craving it. We know from the Northlight's own data that the halo effect that they will bring to our downtown is real. We've seen the halo effects of other institutions in our downtown. I think if they could be opened this weekend, it would be the shot in the arm that we need in our downtown. So I wholeheartedly support this. And Northlight was founded here, left very reluctantly, and now they're back from Babylon. So welcome.
Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 20 years in Skokie isn't as bad as 40 years in the desert, but looking forward to getting Northlight here to the promised land of Evanston as soon as possible. And in order to do that, a strong show of economic support from the city of Evanston will be kind of catalytic in Northlight's fundraising. And I think bringing Northlight back to Evanston will be catalytic for our downtown. Councilmember Wynn spoke about the economic benefits and used the term halo effect, which I'm going to borrow for future use because that's what I'm most excited about. I will respectfully disagree with Councilmember Reed, although I appreciate our discussions on the topic. I think we can sell Northlight on the direct economic benefits, but I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about the halo effect, the indirect benefits that we are going to see in downtown with the increased vitality, the increased vibrancy, the positive mojo, the positive energy is going to have ripple effects that go well beyond the restaurants that are serving theater customers before and after shows. You don't have, I don't know if this is a good analogy to make, but nobody would go to Orlando if Disneyland weren't there. And so we need something like Northlight to really make Evanston a destination to bring people in from out of town. Northlight has the very defensible and thorough, quantifiable documentation that we can fully expect the benefits that are promised here. So I am wholeheartedly supporting the $2 million of ARPA funding for the Northlight Theater and hope that a majority of my colleagues will join me in approving this. Thanks.
Councilmember Braithwaite.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will also support Councilmember Newsman and others regarding Northlight. Over the years, I've been really impressed. Even though you've existed outside of Evanston, you've always had Evanston at heart. And I think for the many of organizations that have their fundraisers, you're always willing to commit and donate without any question. And I think that that's huge. In addition to that, I have had an opportunity to see shows that are very focused on the black community. And I think that that's also something that needs to be said. I think the addition to downtown Evanston as one of the aldermen that holds a footprint in downtown will be a huge asset. And the only thing else that I have to say is what took you so long. So I hope that tonight there will be a very strong support that signals to you, as well as your donor base and the people that support your theater, as well the fact that it's going to be a great event space as well the commitment that you have made to economic development in terms of the metrics with the local employment is just going to be phenomenal. So I'm going to say congratulations in advance. Thank you.
Councilmember Revelle, followed by Kelly.
Well, I just want to echo the comments that my colleagues on the other end of the dais have just made. I think a couple of phrases are really important. The word catalytic, as Councilmember Nusma mentioned, both in terms of the stimulation for the economic vitality of our downtown and the halo effect that Councilmember Nguyen mentioned. I just think that's really exciting and makes our investment well worth it. And I really, in addition to the performances that we're looking forward to seeing at Northlight when you come back to Evanston, the community space that you're providing that's going to be used by other organizations in the community, I think it's going to bring additional vibrancy to the downtown, and I think that's really a big plus for the community.
Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you. Yeah, I also am very, very excited about Northlight coming to downtown. I think this will be a huge boost to our downtown, and I fully support the city supporting Northlight in this venture. I do feel, in the name of fiscal responsibility, not about Northlight or any other organization, but I do feel that we have to, especially coming off of last year with Valley, making a huge profitable sale after giving them $2 million. I think they, in less than 6 years after setting up, they sold for, made more than $20 million over what they spent. And so I do think it's important for the community to embrace this as well, on all levels, that for this and any other project that we do include, I guess, the best are clawbacks, and I would propose a 10-year clawback. And I've also consulted with legal that I don't believe we would, in fact, the money would be returned, because if you imagine if you took ARPA money to support an endeavor, say, that bought property and then later sold it at a profit, that's not what ARPA money is about. I'm not saying that this is what Northlight would do, and I know you're not for profit, but that's not what ARPA money is intended for either, to make, people rich. So in fact, as long as we're using it for the similar purposes, once returned, that money would be returned to the city. So I think it's very important. I'm very excited about this project, and I just think for all projects going forward, we need to do this on behalf of the Evanston residents in the name of fiscal responsibility. So I do ask, and I did share wording with you for an amendment on that, but that's what I would like to see. I'm very, very excited about this project, and I do support the grant. And this would in no way undermine the grant, nor would it undermine in any way the purpose of the grant. In fact, it would reinforce the purpose of our grant, and I think make our Evanston community feel that much better about it. So thank you.
So are you making a motion?
Yes. So I am making a motion to amend it to include the wording that I sent you regarding a 10-year clawback for all practical purposes, to put it in brief terms, as well as, right.
So Councilmember Kelly moves to amend Resolution 30-R-22. You did, in fact, send me a text of an amendment shortly before recently, I guess, during the council meeting. So I have it in front of me. Presuming that there's a second, I would ask you to send it to everyone in the council, just so everybody has a chance. Or if everyone has it, that's so much the better.
Quick question. I know outside of council I can't send to everybody. I wasn't sure. And I know because it's private, can I go ahead and just send to the whole council?
Yeah, we can't have also we're at a council meeting, so that there's an open meeting happening, so that helps.
Right.
But also, you could send an email. The Open Meetings Act is potentially an issue if we start to reply all to an email.
So I think maybe there's, I'll make sure everyone has it.
So Councilmember Kelly has made a motion. Let's begin here. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion to hear from Sarah. I support it in concept, but I don't think it's possible based on conversations that I've been a part of. So I'll second it just to air it out.
All right. So,
and then I put my light on for that motion.
All right. So Councilmember Kelly has made a motion. Councilmember Reed has seconded it. I want to go first to Mr. Cummings.
I just had a question of clarification as to what is being amended, because the only thing before council right now is actually the resolution.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, that was a point, Mr. Cummings, that I would like to make, is that what we are being asked to.
So you'll be called on in order.
Sorry.
Is the back and forth between the council member and the attorney resolved?
She's going to send me the amendment. I was just asking because we'll need to amend it for making sure that the clerk has it in order for it to be signed. So.
Right, and this is not it's not a one-word change here or there. So this is one of those situations where probably people won't complain too much that I'm being pedantic about asking for it in writing. Okay. So the motion has been made by Councilmember Kelly. It's been seconded by Councilmember Reed. It triggered a lot of people turning on lights. So I just want to tell you how the traffic is going to go. We're going to begin with Councilmember Kadakaris, who has not yet spoken, and then go to folks who have already spoken in the order they asked to speak again, namely Councilmembers Reed, followed by Nusma, and then Braithwaite.
Were you speaking on this?
Yeah. So I just wanted to state my support of the Northlight project. I also want to state my support of us as a city operationalizing the idea of building in these clawbacks to all our grants whenever it involves real estate. And so based on what our staff tells us we can do, I'm totally in favor of doing that going forward.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. I'm not chair right now.
So now we go to Councilmember Reed, who has 2 minutes and 20 seconds left.
Thank you, Mayor Biss. Ms. Flex, can I ask you your opinion on this, and can I have my time paused while she's walking up? Thank you. All right.
Thank you. Sarah Flax, Housing and Grants Manager. There is not any real clarity on this. So what happens is it's not in the final rule for ARPA, but it refers to a lot of things in the Uniform Administrative Guidance, which is the OMB circular that covers all federal use of funds. And because ARPA is unlike CDBG we get year after year after year, ARPA has a finite limit. And you can only have loans, for example, that are paid back within the time frame of the grant period, which is the end of 2026. So I've looked at the CDBG program, and I've also looked at various parts of the uniform guidance to try to figure out what we could do. And I believe, but I've always said we have to ask Treasury if this is right, because they always say, check with your agency that's providing you the funding, is that we can put in, I would recommend a 5-year clause, because that's what is used in CDBG. But the process is, if the money is returned after 2026, which is likely it would be, I mean, if it were, I mean, I don't think that they're likely to finish and get in their first season or something and fail. No, I mean, that just doesn't seem realistic. If the money were to be gotten back, it would not be until after 2026, and it would go back to Treasury. But the other thing is, you don't just get the money back. You don't just get the amount back that you say. There is this lovely thing, which is a complex formula. You get the appraised value of the property at the time it is going to be sold. That's the presumption that we would be doing. And then there's a calculation of how much of the total money put into the project was, and then the percentage that is put in by us for ARPA, and you get that percentage of the current value. It's not based on the what we actually put into it. And the reason I think that this is what happens is because it is in the CDBG program, and we actually had to use it one time. Probably, Councilmember Wynn and Braithwaite, you might remember this, when the 1817 Church Street was taken out of CDBG, and we ended up paying money back to the federal government for the money that had been invested on that percentage-wise. Excuse me. We were fortunate in that HUD took the money back and then put it in our line of credit to reuse again. But there is no such thing like that in ARPA, because ARPA is not an ongoing program. So this is the best guidance I can give you. I don't think we would get any money back if it were clawed back after 2026. And I absolutely think we ought to, anything we put in, we should have something that says something like subject to 31 CFR Part 5, Coronavirus State and Local Government Recovery Funds Final Rule, Part 200, Uniform Administrative Requirements, and in compliance with all other applicable federal statutes, regulations, and executive orders. Because we have to send it to them and say, is this okay, guys? And the one thing we've sent to them so far, which is asking permission to purchase the vehicles we need to be able to replace the city part of the lead service lines on an ongoing basis. The federal government does not like purchase of that sort of capital investment of equipment. And so you have to ask the agency that's giving you the money permission. I've sent in an email asking permission. They've acknowledged that they got my email. They've given it a number, and they've said, we're trying to get about 5,000 questions out to the appropriate people to answer. No idea when we're going to hear anything back. So, this is really kind of, it's a challenge for everybody. It's really hard to, there are no answers to this. It's much more confusing than NSP was, because NSP had far fewer things that you could do. So Treasury is getting probably half the country asking them questions. So
Yeah. How much time do I have left on this item?
So let's see, let's do some quick subtraction. 2 minutes and 6 seconds.
On the motion?
I believe the motion and the underlying issue are on the same subject.
Oh, okay. All right, well, so then I guess what we got from that, Sarah, is maybe something can be done, but very likely if it occurs after 2026 that the money will not be returned to the city, and thereby, what is the benefit other than just to penalize the folks who are selling. I wonder if a fine, or some other penalty, not a clawback of the money, but to say that, hey, if you're not around for 10 years, $100,000 is the penalty, and it's not, a clawback necessarily, but just an agreement that, hey, if you're not around for 10 years, you owe us some dollar amount. All right, that's all on the motion, on this particular motion, but I do still have my light on for the main motion.
So, Mr. Cummings, did you have something you want to interject on the motion?
So in reviewing the motion and talking with Councilmember Kelly, the motion itself is not really in order because it does not amend the resolution. However, as I advised Councilmember Kelly, she can certainly express that she will not support the resolution absent these items being included in any agreement, or that these items need to be included in an agreement in order for the resolution to pass. However, the amendment itself is not really in order. As an aside, just to address some of the concerns concerning clawbacks, et cetera, realistically, regardless of the terms of the contract, if something happened to the organization in whatever time period and the money was not returned, or whatever improvements were not, whatever terms of the contract are included, they don't follow them. They're in breach. So the city would have to take action in order to get those things returned regardless. It's not automatic. It never is. So I just wanted to inform the council of that as well.
Thank you.
So, all right, so I have some questions, but let's go back to the lineup. So we're going to go to Councilmember Newsma, followed by Braithwaite, followed by Kelly. So Councilmember Nusma has 2 minutes and 50 seconds left.
Just as a point, if you could start that clock after we clarify a point of order, I would appreciate it. So have we said that the motion to amend is out of order and we are therefore no longer discussing?
You know, you're absolutely right. That's a great point. I apologize. Yes. So I just want to the text of, just for the benefit of the audience who doesn't see our computer screens, the text of the proposed amendment addresses not the actual literal resolution that the council would be voting on, but the accompanying information in the packet. And so it's not.
So there was a proposal to include one of the whereas clauses, which certainly would be in order. However, as I explained to Councilmember Kelly, the whereas is really factual findings of the council. The recitals are factual findings of the council, not necessarily terms and conditions of the agreement.
And just to sort of expand a little more, what the resolution doesn't say, you know, how to put it. Oh, guess what? There's a room on the third floor with $2 million $1 bills in a box waiting for Northlight to pick them up as soon as the vote is over. However much you may wish that. What it in fact says is it authorizes the city manager to enter into a discussion with Northlight about what an agreement would look like. And I guess the point being made is that this very type of clawback provision is one of the items that the city manager would certainly be would be appropriate for the city manager to bring into those negotiations. And so a different path forward, I'm surmising from your sort of sidebar, a different path forward might be to reach an informal agreement regarding what the discussion between the city manager and Northlight would look like subsequent to passage of this. Is that fair?
Point of information, would that agreement then come back to council, or would the council actually vote to expend the actual $2 million? Or is this also, is this resolution the vote to expend the actual $2 million?
So I believe the language in the resolution is to negotiate and execute an agreement. And so the other thing in one of the sections, in Section 3, the amendment could be directed to negotiate and execute any additional documents. That direction can also include the inclusion of the terms that were provided by Councilmember Kelly, if that was an amendment to the resolution under Section 3 of the resolution. But it would be, the resolution is to negotiate and execute. So to answer your question simply, no, it would not come back.
So let's go back to the order then. It's going to be Nusma followed by Braithwaite, followed by Kelly, and then if nobody else wants to take a second crack, then we'll go back to Reed for a third crack. So we go back to Nusma on what is now an unamended. There's no motion there's no amendment on the table. There's just the underlying motion of Resolution 30-R-22, and Councilmember Nusma has 2 minutes and 50 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I stated before, I am 100% behind passing this resolution as currently drafted. In the accompanying memo, there's already a 2-year lien being proposed on the Northlight property. I would suggest that since it seems like there probably does need to be some additional research and discussion on this issue, some findings of fact, and certainly it wouldn't be fair to Northlight to have this conversation without them, that I would be willing to just give staff guidance, the city manager and her staff guidance to take a look at whatever appropriate clawback over and above the 2-year lien may be possible, may be legal, and may be amenable to the grantee. And I'd be comfortable just providing that kind of general direction to staff and approving the resolution with that guidance.
Next is Councilmember Braithwaite with 3 minutes and 35 seconds, who will be followed by Councilmembers Kelly and Nguyen, and then again in the third round, Reed is first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I first want to start out by apologizing both to Northlight, your supporters and followers, as well as the business owners of the Ox. It incenses me for a couple of reasons, only because I just heard of this last night while speaking to some of my peers on other issues, and I wasn't given the courtesy for the business that's opening in my ward, nor you. And I think for whatever issues you ran on, this is the worst exercise of local government that I've seen thus far. It's embarrassing. We have had so many months of conversations around this issue of ARPA and discussing the process and rediscussing the process. To pull this in the last minute is insulting. It's embarrassing. I agree. I'm fine with the concept as it relates to putting forth the protection, but you don't move the goal line in the fourth quarter with like seconds left in the game. And it's especially insulting when we, thank you.
Councilmember Braithwaite has the floor.
It's especially insulting when it relates to our black businesses. There is no equity in that. There is no fiscal responsibility in that. It is just disrespectful. So I'd be more than happy to entertain this idea, but not on the fly tonight. We're getting information from Sarah, who is our guru when it comes to the federal funding. This further delays, it definitely has an impact on both projects. And I think if we're going to examine it, then we do it in a committee session where we have all the facts and figure out how to make it work. I do just want to take a moment to correct some things, because I think sometimes some of us behind this dais takes a little bit of information and just don't fully unpack it. And so for the two businesses that were mentioned earlier, one, Chicago Home and Chicken and Waffles, which the investment was $200,000, there is still a restaurant that's there right now that is still open, that is still generating taxes, both retail as well as property taxes, that is still employing people in our city. And for Valley, the $2 million of short math does not begin to account for the amount of investment to get that place, to get the center to a place where it could be sold for, I can't remember the exact dollar amount. But here's what you have left behind. You have jobs. A site that was less than 30% vacant during the time that it was purchased is now 100% full. You have an increased tax base that we will continue to actualize between now and whenever they decide to sell it again. So I think those are the pieces of information that is critical to discussion, that there's no way that we can begin to unpack that as it applies to these two businesses. So I am going to plead to my fellow council members that we move forward with this process that we've discussed. I think it would be a critical mistake to pause yet again because of a last-minute attempt for someone to seize whatever goal that is short-sighted without our full exploration. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
I think the city manager had a comment to interject.
I feel this is where maybe my overpriced law school education might come in a little bit handy. Council Cummings and I have discussed this in brief detail tonight, but I think there's a really simple solution that might work out well tonight. If we have the authority, if the city manager has the authority to negotiate the agreement, what we've often done is do a forgivable grant or forgivable loan situation whereby after so many years of operation, then the terms upon which the clawback expire automatically. But if there were to be a sale of the building or the business would, the unlikely event that the business would be unsuccessful, there would be those clawback provisions. So we typically have built those into our agreements, and that's usually the way that we negotiate these things. And we often record those agreements on the property. So if there's a buyer interested, they're on notice to the world that there is this obligation owed to the city, and in this case, the federal government. But I don't want Sarah's point to be missed, that in any event, it doesn't sound like the funds would come back to the city, it would go back to the Treasury. So I want to be really clear about that.
Yep.
Can I just make a point?
Please.
Another thing that is going on that I haven't heard a resolution on is there is work to align ARPA with the way low-income housing tax credits work. And that is what our city manager Gandersky was talking about. Forgivable loans aren't in this portfolio, it isn't in our toolbox right now, according to everything that I can read in this. And it makes the housing part that they so desperately want to have produced through this really difficult, because low-income housing tax credits is the primary funder of affordable housing, and if you can't layer ARPA in effectively with that funding source, it really limits us, that and even the time frame. So there's a possibility that they may give some grace on certain types of capital projects, probably not this sort of capital project, because they've actually said they are going to look at things very carefully to see the impact on the organization. And one of the things, and this is in the memo, this I think is really important, is to realize that Northlight is in a business sector that is one of the highest impacted by COVID-19. They were completely closed, and that means a huge number of their employees were laid off or not being able to work. And this is actually would be presented as a disparately impacted nonprofit organization. That's the category it fits into, and I just wanted to make people think about that. I mean, it isn't just, we're not choosing this just saying we're moving ahead with general economic development. That isn't eligible under ARPA.
Thank you. We'll go to Mr. Cummings, and then we're going to have to go back to council members after that.
That's fine. I just want to be clear, because I know that Sarah was just talking about housing. It's not clear in the Code of Federal Regulations whether we can craft this like a forgivable loan. And and Kelly's right. That's exactly what we always do with these sort of agreements. Sorry, City Manager Kandersky is saying that we always do with these agreements. It's just not clear. It's as clear as mud in the Code of Federal Regulations if we're allowed to do that with ARPA. That's the issue.
Actually, the clear as mud is actually in the ARPA regulations, not in the CFR, the administrative part.
So speaking of which, let's go back to the council members, starting with Councilmember Kelly, who's got 2 minutes and 45 seconds left, and she'll be followed by Wynn.
Okay. So first, City Manager Gandersky, that would be great. I think that makes a lot of sense to enter into those negotiations. I would just ask Northlight and everyone involved at the table to keep in mind that Evanstonians did watch Valley sell just a little bit after 5 years in and make more than $20 million of what they paid for it after giving them $2 million. To keep that in mind, and that was just shortly after, it was just under 6 years. So it would be nice if there was a time that exceeded that. I think, again, I'm very excited about Northlight. I'm very excited about the AUX program also. I just want to stand behind the community and be fiscally responsible and have the community embrace this as much as I do. So I think that would be terrific if going forward we could agree to those negotiations, and if we can make that as strong as possible, please, in terms of fiscal responsibility and accountability. And I would like to direct staff to, because I also received other legal information that in fact that money would come back to us, because the money, for example, it's ARPA money isn't used to line someone's, I'm not referring to any of the parties here, but someone's pocketbook. You could invest in a small business, they could sell and triple their money, and that would be ARPA money gone. That's also not what ARPA money is intended for, that it would be more intended to go back to the municipal government to be then spent in a similar way. So that's the information that I received. So since it's conflicting, I would ask that, I would like to direct staff also, I don't want to, I want to move forward with this tonight, but I would ask that we look into, get some clarity with regard to that. And I'd also like to dovetail on what Councilmember Hadakari said regarding operationalizing this, so that we have some standard understanding going forward about this, that we do come to some standard expectation going forward. Thank you.
Next is Councilmember Wynn, who has 1 minute 45 left.
Thank you. I agree with Councilmember Braithwaite. This is negotiating in bad faith, and I'm embarrassed. I am really embarrassed. We don't do this the night that it's on our agenda. This has been in front of economic development over and over again. We have not had anyone come to us and discuss during our economic development committee meetings the idea that we would have a clawback provision.
Point of information, that's.
Councilmember Nguyen has the floor.
All right.
Stating
I don't
something
remember
inaccurate.
it. All right. It wasn't significant enough that we discussed it in detail. Sarah Flax, who is our expert on this, has just told us the money isn't coming back to us. We will end up owing money to the federal government. And we probably will owe money that we have to find. They aren't going to have the money to give back to us. We will have to, we'll get ourselves entangled with the federal government because of a clawback provision, and we will have to pay it back to the federal government. I think that this is, it may have a good, there may be some sense in it, but I think what we are doing tonight is just plain stupid. Stupid. And I'm sorry to say that word, but it is. This is bad faith negotiations. I didn't hear about this till Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock. That's not, and I sit on economic development. Northlight has been carefully, patiently talking to every single one of us about this. Sarah has already told us, Corporation Counsel Cummings has told us, this is going to be incredibly complex to figure out. What is the likelihood that Northlight is going to fail? Tiny, tiny. What is the likelihood that we will have to sue them if they do fail? Corporation Counsel has just told us we will have to sue them. We will have to spend money to get a clawback. Spend money to get a clawback that then we are going to hand back to the federal treasury. I don't want to be on the council when that occurs. I think we're all being foolish tonight. They have been waiting. This money needs to be spent. We need to get going. Get going. And I hope somebody calls the question. I know I can't. Just call the question and get this done.
So speaking of getting going, we have an opportunity to hear from someone for the first time tonight, Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, I'm more in the direction of let's call the question, and if I can
Second.
do that, yeah.
You just did it.
I just did it. Okay.
Second.
Well,
There you go.
Second.
And now can we
Point of order.
discuss now at this point, or no discussion on this?
So just let's all, there's a lot of different demands coming in. Councilmember Burns moves that we call the question. Councilmember Braithwaite seconds.
Well, I wanted to say something first, and then I was going to call the question, but I just called the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
You can't
Mr.
say
Cummings,
something and then call the question.
my understanding is that that's a non-debatable motion, that we now immediately go to voting on Councilmember Burns' motion to call the question. If that passes, then we immediately vote on the underlying issue. Is that correct?
And the motion to call the question requires a 2/3 vote.
Got it. And 2/3 of 8, rounded appropriately, brings us to 6.
Okay, so I'm going to withdraw so I can say something, and then I'll make the motion again. So can I withdraw?
No, you can't.
I can withdraw, right?
The motion to call the question is withdrawn.
Okay. And then you can call it this one, but I support you calling it, so call it. I just wanted to, I didn't want to lose an opportunity to just say, I don't think the only motion really that's on the floor right now is to move this forward. And I think we should call the question and vote on it. Everything else requires much more research than we have time to do today. I am very much so interested in the result of that research, because I think it could impact this decision moving forward, not anything that should stop it from moving forward tonight, as well as it'll also let us know what we need to do in the future. But I just want to be clear, I'm supporting moving this forward now because I think everybody's position is clear. There is some research to do. We're not going to sort this out on the floor, on the fly right now. And I think it's better use of our time and the public's to move this forward. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
So next in line is Councilmember Reed, who has 1:15 left.
Thank you. There were a lot of biblical references earlier, and whether it was 40 years in 20 years in Skokie or halo effect. One thing I want to notice, or put on the record is we're not talking about a movie theater. I know I appreciate Alderman Nguyen's references to Century Theater. A single auditorium in a movie theater has 300 to 600 seats. This entire auditorium is the entire Northlight auditorium is about 300 seats. So we're talking about two different things here. And also, I just want to say it's not fair to conflate the aux and this problem. So I'm hoping that folks don't, read into the two separate projects and two very separate uses. And then to Councilmember Burns, when we vote on this tonight, it's not coming back to council. That's what Council Cummings made clear. There's nothing coming back, so it's not moving it forward. It is ending it here, and the money will be spent. I'll say, as to the halo effect, there were no numbers on that. There was no data presented on the halo effect. There were numbers presented on the direct impact, and I appreciated that. And those were the numbers that I went off of. I don't have some magic ball to figure out what the halo effect is, and we didn't see any data presented on that. And then finally, I know my time is likely up at this point.
Sure is.
I will end my time there.
Next is Councilmember.
Chair, I was summoned, so I just want to quickly respond to say, my point
Turn your
is.
light on, and I'll call on you in your order. Next is Councilmember Kelly with.
It's been in order before. If somebody is,
I think given
my position was mentioned, so I want to clarify.
You'll have the opportunity.
Okay.
Next is Councilmember Kelly with 55 seconds.
I just want to respond to these claims that this was just brought up just now. 2 months ago, Alderman Braithwaite, Wynn, Daniel Bith, Jonathan, Paul Zalmazek, and others received an email from me. I began this discussion back in February, and that's all. I just want to state that for the record. I reshared that email with you all, so you can be reminded that I did, in fact, begin this discussion back in January. Thank you.
So next is Councilmember Burns, who has 3 minutes left.
I'll just call the question. I didn't know that was in order, so I'm going to call the question then.
Second.
Councilmember Burns moves the question. Councilmember Braithwaite seconds. Seeing as the motion is not withdrawn, would the clerk please call the roll on the motion to call the question?
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
No.
Councilmember Heracles.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Braithwaite.
Aye.
Councilmember Wynn. Councilmember Newsma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
All right.
7 voting in favor and 1 voting against, the motion to call the question succeeds. Now, would the clerk please call the roll on the underlying motion? And just for clarity, this is Resolution 30-R-22 as in the agenda, as in the packet, without amendment. There's been constructive discussion about the specifics of the negotiation that might ensue should this pass, but you'll be asked to vote on the unamended ED1.
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
No.
Councilmember Heracles.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
Aye.
Councilmember Braithwaite.
Aye.
Councilmember Wynn. Aye. Councilmember Newsma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
With 7 voting in favor and 1 voting against, item ED1 passes. Would someone like to make a motion on item ED2?
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, get to the page, sorry. I'd like to move Resolution 31-R22 authorizing the city manager to execute a grant agreement with the Ox.
Second.
Councilmember Braithwaite moves item ED2, Resolution 31-R-22. Councilmember Newsma seconds. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Braithwaite.
I'm looking forward to make history this evening with our city council supporting this amazing group of black individuals led by black women. This business checks a lot of boxes, and I just want to run through real quick. They're going to continue to incubate a number of businesses from now till eternity. the blend of services and support of that's going to help support our Black community in light of everything that we've learned throughout the reparation process, I think is going to be huge. The areas of impact that I just want to quickly outline in terms of empowering our Black businesses, stimulating growth of our Black businesses, job creation within our local community. In addition to that, I talked about the wellness component, which I think is really critical, especially given the fact that over the course of this year, we have invested so many resources and continue to invest resources. I'm really excited that there's going to be a whole mental health component to this business structure, healthy foods, meditation, hair and beauty, and other healing therapies that will have an impact on our community for some time. I think it also checks the box for building wealth and closing the racial equity gap. And then more importantly, this investment helps to expand our tax base. And so as we debated in our last conversation, I think it's important to note with the examples of other businesses and our public investment, those businesses are still here in our town. And the Ox will remain in our town. Northlight will remain in our town as assets that will continue to provide a very serviceable use. So I'm looking forward to making history this evening with this $1 million investment. I hope and pray that our news media headlines will read, the City of Evanston City Council unanimously supported the Ox today with $1 million investment in our Black community. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Reed.
Yeah, thank you. I am supportive of the Ox. I will note, I just was going back and looking at the December meeting of the Economic Development Committee, and the meeting prior to that, where I raised clawbacks for both, particularly the Ox, but also, particularly Northlight, but also the Ox. And while I'm supportive of the program, I have a resident who wanted, because of statements that were made during public comment, a resident who's supportive of this, Ms. Courtwright, to clarify a few things on the behalf, and part of what I said was that that'd be your voice at the dais, so I want to be her voice and clarify something. So if someone who can clarify, there's a question earlier about that was raised during public comment by Ms. Payton about the ownership of the building. And so I just want to answer that for my resident who wants that clarified. Hello. Ms. White, correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Jackie White.
Yes.
Thank you for giving the opportunity to clarify. The ownership of the building.
I'm sorry, could you talk into the mic a little bit more? It's hard to hear. Thank you.
To clarify, the ownership of the building, it is owned by the growing season, okay? Lori Lazar, the white lady, that is her non-for-profit. It ultimately will be owned by the community. We can't guarantee that it will be 100% Black-owned. That's very much our intention. That's our goal. We welcome assistance from the community and outreach to help as many Black people own a piece of this. Before it's even complete, we will be starting that outreach program, okay, to raise that $2 million. It will go from the growing season and be transferred to the LLC, the Ox, and then the community will own it. I can put $1,000 and do that. You can. Anyone in the Evanston community. We'd love it to be 100% people of color. I don't know how realistic that is. I think you were one of the first people to actually mention that. people who have money, people who are white, they will be able to afford it and they can buy it up. We're going to actively try to get our people to buy in, okay? So it will be owned by the community, hopefully by the end of 2022. So it won't even be constructed yet, but it will go from the white lady to the community, to clarify that.
Thank you. I've never referred to the person as the white
Well,
lady. Yeah, I
the
just wanna-
person who had the
I just
the
wanna
question.
be clear on
And
that.
it
It's
is
not how I
it's
refer to
the
people.
growing season, to be
Certainly.
proper. It's the growing season that owns the building.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. So, so that clarifies for folks out there who will own the building. And then in our agreement, does this also include a clawback provision that upon completion?
I think this is in the same boat as the last item. It's a resolution to have the city manager negotiate an agreement.
But the draft that was included does include an upon completion, quote unquote, clawback. Yes. So okay. So the answer is yes. If I can have someone from the law department or somewhere confirm that.
I believe our corporation counsel had to step out. I don't know if he's, there he is.
Do you want to repeat the question?
Yes. Thank you, Council Cummings. So this also, is it correct that this also includes the upon completion clawback?
So I'm not exactly sure what you mean by upon completion. Upon completion of what exactly? So, I mean, the agreements are generally structured differently. So if there's build out or construction, there is usually language included in our agreements that says if you fail to complete that construction, that you have to return the money.
Maybe Mr. Zamazak can answer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, city clerk. I'm Paul Zalmazak. I'm the economic development manager. In this particular agreement, we could mirror the exact same language. I put in the memo that we would file a lien on the property for $1 million that would be released upon completion of the facility. So that would be upon receiving a certificate of completion. Mm-hmm. So we feel like that's probably a 2-year process. I think that was their estimate.
Yeah, I would like to, since Ms. White stated that it is the goal to have it transferred to the AUX from the growing season by 2022 within a potentially before the building is even done. I think, unlike the last project, I think it is totally feasible that we put in a provision that if this building is not transferred to the AUX or to transfer to the AUX by 2026, which is when the money would have to be expended, that we would get that money back. I'm sorry, there's going to be I could have sworn it was owned by the AUX. I could have sworn the LLC would have been the AUX. I'm not sure what the AUX is or what the vehicle for the community ownership would be, if that even exists yet. Can someone who knows about the project answer that? Is the goal to transfer it to the AUX or?
Yes, they told us that was the goal.
Yeah, and everybody was just telling me no. That I was wrong on that.
So, if I may, Mr. Mayor, there are members of the team on Zoom or present that could respond directly to that, but yes.
Sure. Ms. White is right here.
So the question is if...
I guess the first question is the AUX the legal entity that the plan is to transfer ownership of the building to?
Correct, LLC.
And the AUX would be I forget the term, but some kind of democratically owned business, a co-op. It would be a co-op.
Well,
correct?
it's the community investors. The people who are investing the $2 million will own the AUX LLC. So it'll transfer into the LLC.
Okay, sure. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So, the investors, so I just usually when I hear community-owned, I think of co-op, not a private business. But the AUX is the entity.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, so that was what I was saying originally, which is that we can put a provision in here that if it is not transferred to the AUX by 2026, that the city would get the money back from the growing season. Because that shouldn't even be a problem, because it'll be transferred to the AUX by 2022. So this should be a non-issue for folks, and it shouldn't be an issue for the growing season or the AUX, because we're giving them 4 more years than what they just stated to transfer ownership from the growing season to the AUX. That's all I'm saying, is that if they don't transfer ownership to the AUX, they owe us something by 2026. Does that sound bad to you, Ms. White?
Not at all.
Okay, thank you. So I give that direction. I would make a motion that, without that, I guess that the city manager shouldn't move forward with a contract, but that should be in the contract, however that motion is made. Council.
Ms. Gandersky?
I'll just say, being a fiduciary to the city and ensuring that the city's interests are met and kept in good standing for the community, we would of course make sure that is a part of the agreement, because we have to have a way to ensure transparency and accountability for this money that's being expended. So our attorney will make sure that that's in the agreement.
The direction is taken, Councilmember Reed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, a number of people are now requesting to speak. The next speaker will be Councilmember Kelly, followed by Wynn, followed by Nusma.
I also think this is a very exciting project, and I support our investment in it. I think, would it not be added to the, what Councilmember Reed just added, would it not be Section 3 of the agreement, of the resolution, where it says, Section 3, the city manager is authorized and directed to negotiate and execute any additional documents. So could it be amended to add that to Section 3? As opposed to what I, was stating as whereas, but it seems that is where you could effectively make an amendment.
I guess I would say, as the chair, I think an amendment like that would be in order. I guess that.
I'm just pointing that out because Councilmember Reed wasn't sure how he could move that forward. So I'm suggesting that if you want to, you could amend Section 3, I believe, to include that stipulation.
If you want, you can make the motion.
Sorry, Councilmember Kelly, did you want to make a motion?
No, I'm giving that. I just wanted to let Councilmember Reed know that it would be amended at Section 3 of the resolution.
Understood.
If you wanted to take it, further than just.
So next will be Councilmember Wynn, followed by Nusma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am very much in support of this also. I am very impressed by the presentations that we have received on this, and I'm excited about this. Is something new, very different, that we haven't done in Evanston, but has been a proven concept elsewhere. And I look forward to its success, and so I wholeheartedly support this as well. And I don't want to have to spend money on lawyers to get money back from them that we then have to give back to the federal government. So that is my direction to the staff, that if we get anything back, it stays in our general fund. But do not want to spend a penny of money on lawyers to hand money back to the federal government. Thank you.
Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will join my colleagues in support of the AUX for the full $1 million and suggest that the discussion about clawback is pretty much the exact same discussion we had about Northlight. The conclusion we had on the previous agenda item was essentially to allow staff to take the direction they received from the council and to proceed to negotiate and execute a grant agreement, which is what we're voting on now. So I am fully prepared to go ahead and vote on that right now. And I guess I can't call the question, but maybe somebody can fairly soon.
I'll call the question.
Why can't you call the question?
Because he spoke.
Well, you can end your comments by calling the question.
I'll just call it for simplicity.
Well, you wouldn't be recognized next, so if.
I will call the question in that case.
All right,
I'll
Councilmember
second.
Newsman moves the question. Councilmember Braithwaite seconds. Would the clerk please call the roll on the motion to call the question?
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
No.
Councilmember Hadakaris.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
No.
Councilmember Braithwaite.
Aye.
Councilmember Wen.
Aye.
Councilmember Newsma.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
With 6 voting in favor and 2 voting against, the motion to call the question succeeds, and so we immediately move on to voting on the underlying matter, which is ED2, which again has not been amended. Will the clerk please call the roll on item ED2?
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Hadakaris.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly. Councilmember Wen. Aye. Councilmember Newsma.
Aye.
You just don't want me to vote,
Braithwaite,
do you?
I'm sorry, I just don't want you to vote.
I'm going to vote anyway.
Councilmember Braithwaite.
Aye.
Thank you. And Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
With 8 members voting in favor, none voting against, item ED2 is declared passed. This brings us to call of the wards, beginning with Councilmember Ravel.
No report.
Councilmember Reed.
We will have our monthly 8th Ward meeting on the last Thursday of this month at 6 p.m. Folks can find that on the city's website. And at the ward meeting, at the 8th Ward meeting, we have regularly discussed city manager updates where residents have asked questions about that. And so I'm proud of that record.
Councilmember Hadakaris.
Nothing to report.
Councilmember Kelly.
No report.
Councilmember Braithwaite. Councilmember Wen.
No report.
Councilmember Newsma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ward meeting Thursday this week, April 14th, 7 p.m. at Robert Crown. Also wanted to say thank you to the community members who came out to office hours last Saturday. We enjoyed a robust discussion about connections for the homeless in Margarita Inn. This was not the first and will not be the last session of community engagement on that issue. Please stay tuned for more dates and times for scheduled community engagement on that discussion. And I can fill you in more at the ward meeting on Thursday. Thank you.
Sorry, I skipped over Councilmember Wen too quickly.
Yes, I want to offer my deepest and sincerest condolences to Dar Francelno, who has been the secretary to the City Council for many years on the loss of her mother. So my deepest sympathy to the entire Francelno family. Thank you.
Councilmember Burns.
Also want to extend my condolences to Dar and her family for their loss. And we have another ward meeting coming up, 5th Ward meeting last Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. And we'll send out a newsletter soon about it. To answer Leslie Williams' question, I can't speak for the full council. We'll see what the full council is willing to put out. But I did work with staff to provide responses to a racial equity impact assessment toolkit by Race Forward. The 3 questions that I think apply directly to the city manager decision we're making are identifying stakeholders and engaging stakeholders, identifying and documenting racial inequities, and identifying success indicators. And so I worked with staff. We've provided those responses to the council. And again, I can't speak for everybody, but based on the reception, I think everybody is using those responses to weigh the city manager decision. In terms of what information that I am using and that I also provided to my colleagues as far as responses to the community. And I didn't provide it, really just put it back in front of us. We already had it. But CPS HR Consulting did a candidate evaluation manual. I believe this is a public document that the community can locate on the city's website. And in that manual, it talks about a survey, an online survey that was conducted. Over 940 Evanston residents responded and provided feedback on important skills and abilities that they wanted the council to look for in a new city manager, important personal attributes, and then if exhibited by applicant would challenge their success in the role. I collated the top 4 in each category and provided that to my colleagues on the council. And so that's another document that we have. And again, the health department, our city's health department, as well as our housing manager responded to the race forward questions that I discussed earlier. So we're trying our best to be fully informed in making this decision. And then lastly, sorry for the long call of the awards, just wanted to say, again, excited about the AUX and Northlight. I won't go into an extended reason why, but the main thing I want to just get across is that both are an ARPA eligible use. And because I think it was suggested early on that this was an improper use of funds. It is not. It is ARPA eligible. But that doesn't mean that we also aren't going to focus on affordable housing, workforce development. There's some really exciting proposals that are making their way through the process that I think Evanston residents are going to also be as equally excited about. So the work isn't done, the money isn't entirely gone, and there's a lot more work to do. Thank you.
Councilmember Braithwaite.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to join our city council in offering condolences and prayers to the entire Logan family, as well as Fran Channel during this time of loss. And we will continue to keep them in prayer. To the items that we discussed earlier, I want to say congratulations to the VFW Post 1786, celebrating 75 years of support to the men of the 1786 Post. Thank you all so much for your commitment to the community. Those of you who may not know, they provide, one of many things that they provide that I really appreciate is an essay contest that they award on an annual basis to deserving students who contribute. There's a whole host of things that those amazing women do to support them. I just want to lift that up, and I think it was a great way to provide tribute to them to honor their 75 years of service. In addition, I want to congratulate our city council. I think this was historic tonight, and I think this is a step in the right direction to help revive our business community that has been hurting due to the pandemic for the last 2 years. I have nothing but confidence that the AUX will do, I'll start with Northlight, that Northlight will do exactly what we expect them to do, and that is to bring in a diverse population. It will be supported by the city of Evanston and attract people from all over the suburbs, and it will continue to feed our downtown community in terms of support for our restaurants and other businesses, as well as provide an additional entertainment space, hopefully large enough to keep those of the other organizations that have to leave Evanston in order to find adequate space. So congratulations, and especially again to the ladies of the AUX. I'm a firm believer if you want to get things done, you find black women and they will kick the door open and make it happen. And I think we'll see this with this organization. I think for a town that supports and leads our country in reparations and understands the need to invest and support our black community, this is just one more step in that direction. And so I'm really proud today of our city council and proud to say that both businesses are going to be in the city of Evanston. Thank you.
Councilmember Newsom is recognized for a motion.
Pursuant to 5 Illinois compiled statutes 120/2A, I move that the City Council convene into executive session to discuss agenda items regarding personnel and collective negotiating. These agenda items are permitted subjects to be considered in executive session and are enumerated exceptions under the Open Meetings Act as set forth in 5 ILCS 120/2A, sections C1 and C2.
Second.
Councilmember Newsome moves that we resolve into an executive session. Councilmember Reed seconds. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember Haddock-Garis.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly. Councilmember Braithwaite. Councilmember Nguyen. Councilmember Newsome.
Aye.
Councilmember Burns.
With 8 voting in favor and none voting against, the motion passes. And at 9:40 a.m., the City Council resolves itself into an executive session to begin immediately.